Hello, this is Matt Ballant again with episode 7 of the Valley of the Pharaohs, how to play, how to set up characters, my ideas on the game, and other information for background material. Today we're going to talk about occupational specialties. You might think of these as equivalent to character classes in other games. However, they're much less restrictive and really they're only designed to give an initial set of skills or choices for the player when they're initially creating the character. They're much less restrictive as the character grows and increases in power throughout the course of the game. The occupations are as follows: be a soldier, priest, scholar, merchant, thief, artisan, craftsman, or laborer. In the original game, artisan, craftsmen, and laborers were incorporated in the other occupations, primarily merchants and thieves. But in the reworking of the game, I felt I had a compelling enough idea to break these out into their own occupations. Now, as listed and as noted in previous episodes, the cast of the character restricts the possible occupations. Also, the race or circle of the character can come into play in this as well. Now, for human characters, there is no restriction based on race, but for all the other circle, there is. There's some of the various occupations that they cannot choose to start out. Each occupation receives some kind of bonus to their skills when they're initially calculating them. Soldiers receive martial combat automatically. They don't have to choose that as one of their occupational skills, and they receive a +5 bonus in that skill. Furthermore, if they choose a tactics skill, and this must be chosen, they will receive a 5% bonus. Priests and scholars receive reading and writing automatically, and they also receive a 5% bonus in each of those skills. Merchants receive bartering, and they get a 10% bonus in that. Thieves receive a 5% bonus in their perception. Perception is a common skill. Every character comes with that skill. They don't have to choose it. It's granted their base skill. Perception and balance are the two common skills in that regard. Artisans and craftsmen, they must choose an area of focus. And this would be, for example, an artisan, you might choose to be a painter or a sculptor. A craftsman could be a woodworker or a carpenter or even a baker. And within that area of focus, they receive a 10% bonus in that skill. Laborers, much like the soldier, receive unarmed combat automatically. They don't have to choose that. And they receive a 5% bonus in their starting skill level. Soldiers have what's called a military occupational specialty, or MOS, and those are listed in the chart below. Now, you can either roll randomly on this chart, or if the party and the game master agree, you might decide to base a campaign where all of the characters served in the military in some manner. Say they were all in the army. Some might have been archers, some might have been swordsmen or auxiliary members of the military. In general, there's 3 branches of the military. There's the Army, the Navy, and the Chariot Corps, with the Chariot Corps being considered the elite forces of the military in ancient Egypt. You also have the ability to be a member of the Medjay or the police, and these are generally a national police force, but they did serve local provinces and local nobles, that sort of thing, or perhaps a pioneer, which is someone with a more engineering, combat engineer, or military engineering background. Priests. In ancient Egypt, anyone who worked for a temple was considered a priest. So this could be even if you were the janitor or a low-level clerical type person or somebody who worked in the warehouse, you would still be considered a priest in ancient Egypt. The most common priests were called Bab priests, known as pure ones, and they held most of the bureaucratic type positions within temple. There was some specialization in hierarchy in the priesthood. The Hem-Ka, or the servants of the Ka, were responsible for the various offerings made to the deity within the temple. And when I say responsible, they would be not only preparing them, but presenting them, going through the various liturgical actions and prayer reciting, that sort of thing, as making the offerings. The lector priests, or Keri Hebet, would be the closest you might think of to, say, a Judeo-Christian idea of a priest working in a church. This is an individual who would read religious texts, perform rituals to the god, perhaps even give sermons or discussions within the temple, that sort of thing. The last two were very specialized. The Sem priest generally only presided over mortuary rituals and the process of mummification. And the last, the Imhotep, or pillar of his mother, these generally were employed at mortuary temples. So the nobility and the high level or upper class in society often had temples designed to perpetuate the memory of them when they were deceased. So they'd go through the process of mummification, have a tomb, various opulence, some very minor, some very grand, rivaling even some of the high nobility, depending on how wealthy the individual was. But they would, all of them would generally have some sort of temple associated with them. And this is where the priest would go to perform various rituals and recite various spells to ensure the comfortable afterlife for the deceased. The deceased would have enough food and have enough leisure, and everything would be nice and fine for the deceased. Now, it didn't mean that the priest was only employed at the one temple. Quite often you would have a priest who might have half a dozen or so different temples. They would have clients, so to speak, where they would go and perform these rituals on a regular basis. But other ones, especially if you're talking about the level of the pharaoh or the viziers, those would be only employed at the mortuary temples of such important individuals. Scholars are the seekers of knowledge. Generally, these people would be employed by either the state or very wealthy organizations such as temples or schools, or even individuals, but they would have to be very, very wealthy people. And they would be employed as generally as advisors, or in the case of physicians or scribes, they would actually work for those individuals or those organizations. Now, as with any of these lists of focus, these skill focus, these are what I would consider the more common items. So what I mean by that is if your group decides that there's another occupation or another skill focus that isn't represented here that you want to play, by all means add it to your game. The whole point of this is to allow players to generate and maintain a persona that they enjoy and they want to play. So it's by no means the all-encompassing list, just some of the more common occupation specialties that existed in ancient Egypt. Again, merchants, these are generally individuals who buy and sell goods, perhaps manufacture them as well, depending on the nature of what it is that they're selling. These also include services sometimes, and especially in the course of something like a merchant who deals in freight, they might have contracts with a furniture maker or a greengrocer or something to cart and transport goods to and from different places, different warehouses. Something maybe they're supplying a work camp for some state project, and they would employ a freight merchant to transport the actual goods. Thieves all have to have what you might call a regular job or a cover job. These tend to be lower level type jobs. And again, these are fairly common type of positions. And again, as I said earlier, this is not meant to be an all-encompassing list. If you think of a better or another cover type job, by all means add it to your game. Artisans, now we're getting into the specialized occupations. Artisans and craftsmen especially, they all have to have a focus. And what I mean by that is an artisan, you're generally not going to be a all-encompassing artist. You're only going to be able to do one thing well in general, such as painting or jewelry making or carving, something of that nature. Notice also dancing and music is represented in this list as well. As with the artists, the craftsmen also have to have a specialty. These are some of the very common specialties in ancient Egypt. But again, if you can think of a better or more interesting occupation, by all means, write it up, develop some rules for it, and go for it. That's the whole point of role playing. And finally, our laborers. These are the whole meat and bones of society. They do most of the work. That doesn't mean that all the characters should be laborers. Again, this is just ideas for generating characters and giving them a background. And this is, again, just where they came from. This doesn't mean that this is where they're going to remain, but it just gives both the player and the game master an idea of what their worldview might be, what they might have been exposed to as they were maturing to an adult, what their family life might have been like, and that would influence their skills and skill level. Now, the next video, we're going to get into the actual skills themselves, because when you are choosing your occupational class, you really need to take into consideration what your attributes are and the types of skills that are available to the class that you're going to choose, the occupational specialty. It wouldn't make much sense for you to decide, hey, I want to be a thief, and you have poor power or poor intellect. Those are the kinds of attributes which affect most thieving skills, or quickness. If you have a poor quickness, it's probably not a good idea to be a thief. By the same token, if you're wanting to be a scholar, if you have a poor intellect or poor power, those affect a lot of those skills. So you might want to think of something else based on those attributes. And we'll get more into the skills and how their initial scores are determined in the next video. Again, if you would like to purchase a copy of the game, please go to concrodesigns.com. I have a store there. You can order it online. If you are out of the USA, please contact me directly, and I can arrange for shipment to you. Unfortunately, the way that international shipping is, it's really very difficult to set up a store that will accurately quote shipping. Either it's going to be very low or very high, and I don't want to charge anybody more for shipping than what it actually costs me. So if you're in Canada or outside of the Americas, please let me know directly, and I'll make sure I get a copy to you. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.